Trilogies are not always sequential. What that means is that it's not always necessary for 3 films in a series to follow up on the same narrative established by the original. Like, we know The Dark Knight was a trilogy because it was literally one story told throughout the series, but that's not necessary for it to be called a trilogy. Then why call it that in the first place, you ask? Because when filmmakers make a series of independent films that largely focus on a common point of interest, they're likely to package that bunch of films under one umbrella, which is intentionally done to evoke similarities between that bunch of films. This is also called spiritual successors by many, in that the movies don't necessarily share the same plotline, characters, or continuation, they're just made to satisfy one exclusive theme. Okay, that's enough of tuition for one video, you guys. Welcome to Filmanter, and for today's list, we'd be taking a look at some of the most influential thematic or spiritual trilogies ever made in Hindi cinema. It's a very interesting topic to explore, guys, especially given the lack of understanding surrounding it. So hurry up and subscribe before I change my mind and end the video here. I'll wait. Done? Great, let's begin. 5 greatest thematic trilogies ever made in the Hindi cinema. Number 5. Anubhav Sinha's Discrimination Trilogy. We'll start off with the most recent trilogy on our list and one that took the least amount of time. That is, all 3 were a year apart from each other. Director Anubhav Sinha's sudden social reawakening after his uninspiring ventures in movies like Ravan, Cash, and Tum Bin 2 resulted in the director etching his way in Hindi cinema's history with a trilogy that made people think. Think about religion, caste, and gender, 3 of the most prevalent bases of discrimination in the country that still result in all kinds of hate crimes, violence, and even homicides. While Mulk in 2018 set its focus on a Muslim family on terrorism trial, Article 15 in 2019 saw an officer try to uncover the truth behind caste-based felony in rural India. And finally, Thappad in 2020, which was the most subtle of the 3, followed a married woman's dilemma after once getting impulsively slapped by her husband. Tackling tough subjects in each of the installments, and more importantly, being prepared to confront them honestly and sincerely, Sinha's take on each of the issue was met with universal acclaim for all 3 films, while also generating political rift simultaneously. Collaborating with some of the bigger stars in the industry like Ayushmann Khurrana, Taapsee Pannu twice, and the late Rishi Kapoor, Anubhav Sinha's trilogy is the latest addition to the film industry, so it's hard to really understand its long-term cinematic or even social influence, but looking at the early trends, this series is only going to get bigger with time. Number 4. Mani Ratnam's Terrorism Trilogy. When one of the most successful Tamil directors in 1990s made his debut in the Hindi film industry, he did so by completing his own trilogy of terrorism with the 1998 release Dil Se. Following the success of its Tamil counterparts in 1992's Roja and Bombay in 1995 with the Hindi language film was an interesting creative decision that now makes more sense when looking at the series holistically. All the films were designed to follow a personal story each against the backdrop of some of the most hostile events in Indian history, all carrying political undertones and social subtexts within. While Roja focused on the kidnapping of a newly married man by a militant group in Kashmir, Bombay 3 years later saw an intercaste married couple caught between the 1993 Bombay riots, whereas Dil Se followed a Delhi-based reporter to Assam during the insurgency in northeast India, where he finds himself getting attracted to a mysterious woman. The seamless way with which Ratnam blended these personal stories with the larger issues these movies were shedding light on garnered immense appreciation by audience all around India and abroad. The series blurred the lines between regional cinema and languages in a way never before seen in the country, while staying true to the localities they were based on. With nuanced character traits that subtly mirrored the complex political conflicts the films were talking about, believe us when we say that the 3 films in Ratnam's trilogy always have something new to offer the more you watch them even today. Also, this trilogy gave birth to A.R. Rahman. Need we say more? Number 3. Vishal Bhardwaj's Shakespeare Trilogy. Is there anything we haven't said about this trilogy yet that needs to be told? When everything is said and done, and the world has exhausted all possible permutations of William Shakespeare's work, one of the most fondly remembered of them all would be Vishal Bhardwaj's Indian adaptation of Shakespeare's Macbeth, Othello, and Hamlet, making up for a timeless trilogy working as a masterclass in cinematic adaptations of literature. but describing his work as mere adaptations feels overtly simplistic and does a disservice to Bhardwaj's brilliance at display here. Each film in the series updates both the language and the setting of their play to fit contemporary India, and more importantly, with each passing film in the trilogy, Bhardwaj juxtaposes an additional layer of storytelling in the plot. What starts off as an outright storyline adaptation with 2003's Maqbool goes through an undertaking of Othello with rural India socio-political undertones in Omkara and reaches the unlikeliest Hamlet story caught between the highly hostile Kashmir conflict in 2014's Heather. It's an interpretation in a breathtakingly original manner, something that not only makes some of Shakespeare's most recognized work relevant to the Indian audience today, but thanks to its storytelling, even succeeds in transcending the limitations of language to reach to a global audience. The trilogy has on its own found its way in modern-day literature internationally and only promises to become more iconic with time. Number 2. Deepa Mehta's Elements Trilogy. With Fire in 1995, Earth in 1998, and Water in 2005, the Indo-Canadian trilogy by Mehta is by far the most controversial series on this list, and that too crucially by design. Dealing with a taboo subject each within the Indian subcontinent, the trilogy was a monumental undertaking of common themes such as gender, sexuality, violence, and religion, and that too largely through a feminist perspective, the relevancy of which is still depressingly true today. Fire, being the first feature, talked about arranged marriages and homosexuality in the patriarchal culture of the country. 3 years later, Earth focused on the religious strife during the partition of India in 1947 and the ensuing genocide that followed. And lastly, Water brought up the subject of misogyny and suicide among the widows in rural India. With the combined casting of A-list Bollywood actors like Amir Khan, John Abraham, Shabana Azmi, and twice in Nandita Das's case, along with music by A.R. Rahman and cinematography by Giles Nutjens, the groundbreaking trilogy focuses on how elements are what nurture us and ultimately destroy us. The films were naturally met with opposition in India, even enough to cause filming delays for the John Abraham starrer Water for over 5 straight years, which was finally filmed in Sri Lanka, and that too under a fake title. Deepa Mehta's Elements trilogy holistically went on to garner rave reviews internationally, with Water fetching Mehta her first Oscar nomination under the foreign films category. And number 1, Ram Gopal Varma's Gangster trilogy. Around the same time as Deepa Mehta was creating strides internationally as a leading Indian filmmaker, Ram Gopal Varma was emerging as one of the pioneers in domestic cinema with a keen eye for the Mumbai-based underworld scene that the city had over the years become synonymous with. It was during this time that he collaborated with newbies who went on to become some of the most recognized names in the industry over the years to bring us Satya in 1998, Company in 2002, and D in 2005. The real-life inspired films that brought a sense of unprecedented gritty rawness to mainstream cinema went on to inspire a generation worth of films, with Satya even going as far as being called as one of the greatest films of all time by many outlets. While the former was believed to be loosely inspired by the dreaded dons of Dagdi Chaul Arun Gowli and Mohan Raule, Company 3 years later was an out-and-out adaptation of the fallout between Daud Ibrahim and his 8-turned nemesis Chota Rajan, a rivalry that left the entire city bruised and shaking. The lesser-known D in 2005 that finally completes this Mumbai Noir trinity, while not being directed by Varma explicitly, still had his fingerprints all over it as the film's writer and producer. The Randeep Hooda starrer worked more like a prequel to the other two films, revolving around the initial rise of the D Company in the city. The influence this trilogy has had on Indian cinema as a whole is unparalleled, with a mesmerizing display of brutality soaked in realism. Satya and Company were also cited by British director Danny Boyle as influences on his Academy Award-winning film Slumdog Millionaire in 2008. And there you have it, guys, 5 greatest thematic trilogies ever made in the Hindi cinema. Did we miss any other noteworthy trilogies from our list? Do let us know in the comment section down below. If you like what we do here, please make sure to subscribe to Filmanter. It keeps us motivated to bring you weekly content like this. Also, if you're a returning viewer, share this video with your friends, guys. Spread the word. That's the only way we can grow. With that out of the way, please have a safe week ahead. My name is Amir and I will see you soon.